Hey babe,
Hey,
do you know what every admiral needs?
what?
More boats.
Oh no. What do we got here?
We've got a monohull and a catamaran. Today, we're going to talk about some of the differences to consider when you're choosing between the two.
Okay, so first difference, or a difference, stability. This one has a wider stance, so it's not as easy to tip over. While this one won't tip over as easily as this one could, if this one does capsize, it's less likely to flip back up. Whereas monohulls are designed to, if they do capsize, if there was a keel here, the weight of the keel would keep it going. So while you might lose your rig, you might lose some of your stuff on your deck, you may not lose your boat because it is designed to capsize and keep going. Whereas this one, it's not likely to capsize, but if it does, it's very hard to push it back up or right itself.
One other difference between a monohull and a catamaran concerns safety and redundancy. So let's say we are sailing along, all things being equal, boom, catamaran hits something under the water with one of the holes. Now that hole is breached. This hole could likely still be intact. So therefore, that hole gives you more of a fighting chance to stay afloat. This one, sailing along, boom, hit something in the water. You don't have that second hole to help keep you afloat.
So another difference between the two is you have more space because there's usually multiple cabins in each hull. And then, it allows for like a trampoline, and then they have the pass through, which is usually where they have the galley and like a really nice large living space. So you have more space than a monohull normally does of the same length. However, then you can't get close and snuggle. No thank you for me. Now, another difference is when you have a catamaran, it has two hulls, which means an engine in each one. And a monohull has one engine, and that means that a catamaran has twice the amount of fuel, can carry twice the amount of fuel, which is great usually, because you have the extra space, but you have to do maintenance on two different engines and keep two different engines running at all times. Whereas if you have a monohull, you just have the one to worry about. And also, if you have two, for safety, it is kind of nice because if one goes down, you do have the other to fall back on to make sure you can get into wherever you need to go.
So another difference between the two worth consideration is when there's a catamaran, there's obviously two holes. And so as the catamaran is traveling through the water, depending on how the sea state and the motion is of the sea, confused seas, if they're not predictable, if they're not consistent, they're confused, and maybe the waves are going from either direction, that has a tendency to make the catamaran really, really uncomfortable. You have bridge deck slamming, because some of the water can slam under the bridge deck here, which causes a loud noise inside, and that can be really annoying for some people. Also, confused seas means the two different holes can kind of do this motion. One can go up, the other one can be down, and then if the construction of the catamaran isn't quite up to par, that can cause the two holes to create structural damage in the boat itself. Whereas with the confused seas or big seas on a single hull monohull boat, it's just bobbing around in the water, right? There's not two holes that could potentially work against each other because it's just one single solid unit floating through.
So another thing about stability, having two hulls provides a larger surface area on the water. So in calm seas, like calmer and or predictable seas, you can have a lot more stability, where as if you're on the monohull, it could take a little bit more of each individual thing because it doesn't have as much surface area. So it looks kind of like this.
Another consideration when choosing between a monohull or a catamaran is time at anchor. Most of the time when you're cruising, you're not in passage, you're at anchor. And so if you happen to have an anchorage that's a little bit rolly and not quite calm and peaceful and flat water, the rolling motion of a monohull be a lot more pronounced than the rolling motion of the catamaran. The catamaran is going to be more stable, allowing you a more comfortable motion while at anchor, whereas this monohull will again be a little more susceptible to rolling with the swell. So we hope you liked some considerations when choosing between a catamaran and a monohull.
There's so much more. We're not experts.
Definitely not experts.
Definitely not experts.
But the point of the video is not to say one is better than the other, because that's not true. It's your own personal preference and what you need out of a boat to live your dreams.
So get on the water. So this week, we're gonna try to wrap up the propane project. I don't know if it'll actually be over, but